Did you hear about the metal casting competition for college students that just got its own show? Hear about it next on the K 12 Engineering Education Podcast. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Pius Wong in Austin, Texas. It's been a while, and I'm happy to share this recent talk I had about the Cast in Steel competition and show, which you can watch online starting this July 2026. Let's crank it up and listen.
Absolutely. I am Robert Monroe, and yes, I am coming on here to talk about Cast and Steel. Cast and Steel was started by the Steel Founders Society of America, and it's a college student competition where we task college students to create something awesome out of steel using metal casting and modern techniques. My particular role is basically marketing lead. I've been doing that since 2023, but I do have a personal connection. My father, Raymond Monroe, is actually the creator of Cast and Steel, and that started around 2019.
Got it. I did see the name connection. I didn't put that together, but that's cool. So you've seen this group start from a long time ago and how it's evolved, I guess.
Yeah, it's actually pretty exciting. I was not personally there at the 2019 competition, but it
Mm.
just started off as a random idea from my father. He thought that we were really not pursuing the workforce development. He doesn't even like that term workforce development because it feels so clinical. It doesn't feel personal. It doesn't if you think about it instead of from a top down, but from a bottom up perspective, if we really want to get the next generation excited about manufacturing, we need to put it in terms that are going to be exciting to them and not just be, this is something you should do because it's important to the country and to these industries, but instead frame it as something fun, as a challenge. And
Yeah.
so he started in 2019 going, hey, these foundry clubs around the country, would you like to make a Viking axe as a possibility of a senior design project? No restrictions. Just make it however you want. It just needs to be cast. And so he threw out that call in 2019, and they ended up getting over 20 teams from 16 universities the first year. And he also had a really interesting idea of bringing in Ben Abbott from Forged in Fire as a forging guy. But the cool thing is, if you can make a forging guy happy with a metal casting, then you must be doing something right.
Yeah. Okay. I have, if I'm going to break in here, I have many questions.
Of
Can I
course.
ask you to do just quick background? Because there's a lot of engineers like myself even who don't work a whole ton in forged steel or metals and cast metals. I've worked in it a little bit tangentially for manufacturing, but there's also a lot of teachers who listen. Do a 1-minute summary of what cast metal is or cast steel is versus other manufacturing processes.
Greatly appreciate the question. Yeah, so when you are talking about metal casting versus other methods, so first of all, as my dad loves to say, all metal is cast. And what that means is at some point, we turned it into a liquid to pour it into a shape. And then we may take that shape, maybe it's a bar, and then we weld it to something, which is more a fabricating technique, or we pound it. So we take a big hammer, and some of these power hammers that they have these days are insane, the scale and the size and the power. But then you just pound it into the shape. That's called forging. And then our favorite technology is metal casting, and that is where you pick a mold. And so you effectively make a negative or a cavity, an empty space that is the shape of the thing you want it ultimately to be. And then you pour metal into that empty space. And there's a lot of fun, different ways of doing it. Probably one of my favorites, just because of how unique it is lost foam, where you literally carve what you want out of metal, out of foam, and then you pack sand all around it, have a little hole at the top to pour the metal in. You heat up your steel in a furnace until it gets liquid, and then you pour it through that hole, and the foam evaporates and only leaves behind that empty space that's exactly the shape you wanted it to be.
That's super cool. And you're making me remember that there are tons of videos on Instagram and YouTube that I've seen of this. It's very viral or trending right now. And also, you mentioned Forged in Fire. Some people might not be familiar. That's like a reality show, like based on a similar concept, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, Fortune Fire, they're challenging bladesmiths to make something through forging, and again, probably the easiest way to understand that is the blacksmithing angle, where most of us have been to a Renaissance fair, and you see a guy, and he's got a big fire that he's typically using bellows to get even hotter than a campfire, and that can get hot enough that you can actually get the steel. Because one of the reasons why we didn't use steel for forever is it's really hard to get hot enough to actually do anything with. But with bellows and other techniques, you can get hot enough, red hot, that you can actually pound it into the shape you want. And so that's the Forged in Fire idea. And it's a fun show because it really popularized metalwork,
Yeah.
I would say, in the
Yeah.
last few years.
And so I'm glad you've given us the speed run of like what this whole concept is and kind of what the show is. You're getting college students involved in all of this, not just leaving it to the folks in media and popular media. But I do want to hear more about the Who. You talked about how your father and other folks at the Steel Founders Society of America are involved in this show. Can you tell me a little bit about, yeah, just a little bit more about not just your father, but you mentioned there's a lot of professionals involved in the SFSA and this new cast and steel program. There's engineers, there's technicians. Like, tell me about who's interested in metal casting.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for asking. Yeah, the scope of who's involved is quite incredible in terms of the level of different types of people. So I would say, starting from an organizational level, you have pretty much everybody from Steel Founders Society comes out and helps. We have administrative people to make sure the trains run on time and all the students get
Mm,
food. Anybody who's involved with college students knows that's extremely important to make sure they're fed. And then we have all the way through technical judges who are leading experts in their field. We have people who have been working with metal casting for 40 plus years who are judging the technical papers that these students have to submit. We have marketing people look at the videos to make sure that the videos are done well. And then we also have a lot of people. And that's more on the administrative side. Then we have experts that we bring in from outside. So we have Patrick Nowak, who's an awesome guy from the forging industry. He works at Scott Forge. He's been a judge for quite a while. We have David Baker as well. I think I mentioned Ben Abbott as well. They're from Forged in Fire. They've been bladesmiths and prop makers for forever. We're super grateful to have governmental support from the DOW. Matt Draper has been an awesome support there, and IBAS and that whole crew, and then multiple other trade associations. But then I think from an educational side, the really exciting thing is there's many professors from schools all over Ohio State University, Pitt State, Michigan Tech, all over the country. This past competition this year, not the one that is in the TV series coming out on the 9th,
mm-hmm.
but from this year, we had 58 teams.
Oh wow,
Some multiples from universities, so not quite 58 universities, but
sure.
from all over, all the way from France, competing. And then each of those have their own industry partner. And so you're talking from small investment casting that's similar to that lost foam process, where you're making typically maybe a smaller batch of parts, and you're working at a smaller scale, all the way to just humongous metal casting facilities will open their doors to help these students with understanding the technology and also actually pouring the thing that they're asked to make.
That's exciting because you're marketing from the marketing side. I can tell it's working, but there's clearly interest in manufacturing methods and metal. Why do you think that is?
I've thought about this a lot because my main role in the project is on the marketing side. And what I've really come to realize is and I'll just speak from my own experience. I'm a little bit on the older side. I'm in my late 30s, but when you look at that, the message that was sent to us, and I think was continued to send, was don't get involved in manufacturing. Don't go into a dirty industry.
Hmm.
The success is getting your college degree. Nothing wrong with going to college. It's the college competition, but get a
Yeah.
college degree, go into a safe industry, maybe do something with computers, something with tech. And what I think we really missed in that message is, first of all, the reality that we're surrounded by physical objects. If you look around your house, there are many metal castings. Your door handles are metal castings. Your phone case, all of these different things, a lot of them are metal castings. And so we have to keep making these things. And they're very fulfilling industries from a personal meaning standpoint. Don't want to get too philosophical or spiritual here, but there's something very satisfying from a pure human physical level in creating something you can hold versus making something digital.
Right. Nobody is vibe coding this sword that people are making right now. AI is not going to
No.
replace these. So, talking about the human, you raised this really important point, the human connection in this. And when I was learning about Cast and Steel, this program, which I'm going to repeat what you just said, other people, the public, can see last year's competition, right? July 9th on YouTube. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm bearing the lead here. Yes.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
July 9th at around 8 p.m. Eastern,
Okay.
but then it'll just be up from there, and episodes will come up weekly. We are premiering our first season of Cast and Steel. It's not the first year, it's not like we're going back to 2019, but in
Right.
2025, we had gotten the funding to turn it more into a reality TV style production. And I want to emphasize it's a style production. It's not reality TV in the sense that it's not all fake.
It's not
It's
trash
real
TV.
student. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
exactly. It's real students really doing this competition, and what we're really grateful about is having that degree of visibility and that quality level will allow us to get into a lot of spaces that this type of industry typically is not in because just people don't see it. I
Hmm.
I had the benefit of having a lot of family connections to metal casting, so I've been aware of it. But if you talk to a lot of people, they're not necessarily aware of this whole world. And what I personally love so much about these episodes is there's a huge focus on the individual stories of the students and how they go from, some of them didn't even know that metal casting was a thing. They
Hmm.
got to college. Someone said, "Hey, you want to come to my club?" And they're like, "What's your club do?" And they're, "Well, it's a foundry club. What's that?" "Well, there's pizza." "Okay, I'm in." And they show up and then they are exposed to this whole world and they fall in love with it. I think one of my favorite quotes from one of the professors in the show is metal casting is the closest thing we have to legalized pyromania. So if you love fire, if you love excitement, if you love, that type of thing, it really beckons to not everybody, but a certain, section of the population, and you get to experience that vicariously through the students through the show. So it premieres July 9th and then runs through, I think, middle of August because it's
Like
six
a
episodes,
got it weekly release kind of thing.
weekly release, and it showcases the student's story to the competition and then showcases
Got it.
each qualifying round. So there were five qualifying rounds.
Yeah.
And so they're testing that year was George Washington's sword. So they made a replica of George Washington's sword, and they tested that. And then we picked a winner of each of those qualifying rounds, and then those went on to the final. The final episode, the sixth episode, then centers around who wins that and ultimately gets a $25,000 prize.
That's awesome. And like I'm sure the college students will want that prize. I'm sure there's all these
Yes.
expenses related to college nowadays.
Hey, a couple weeks not on ramen sounds pretty
Yeah,
appealing.
exactly, exactly. And you talk about how these students, especially, maybe they haven't heard of it before, but they're really this field, this competition, but the field in general is appealing to like people who want to have this human connection because they get to create something. It's still a creative profession, but still highly technical, maybe a little dangerous in
Yes.
some ways. So, just briefly, like, what's the kind of technical skill that goes involved in this? What are we going to see when we watch, this first episode of Cast and Steel? What kind of thinking, what kind of stories do we, or is someone going to expect?
Yeah, I think that's what's really fascinating about metal casting as an industry is it is one of the oldest things humans have made. Humans since prehistory basically have been finding a way to heat up metal hot enough, especially the softer metals, to then put it into a particular shape. But it has become incredibly technically sophisticated. I would say the first thing that if you haven't seen before is the modeling aspect of it. And so, I know I was dissing on computers earlier, but computers, and if you're interested in working with software and programming, it's super important to be able to know ahead of time what the properties are going to be. So you have simulation, which is basically, using a computer to predict what type of flow is going to happen when you're pouring the metal. There's all sorts of problems that can arise with how you shaped your mold and whether the spaces all actually get filled or whether there's air pockets, which is called porosity. Then you also have 3D printing. You will see an incredible amount of 3D printing. I know that's all the rage in the hobby space right now, in the maker space. And what a lot of times you do with 3D printing is you're either rapidly prototyping something or you're actually using it as part of the mold process. Because I know I mentioned foam earlier, but you can
Yeah.
do basically the same type of thing with a 3D printed mold. As well, you have, the basically then you have sometimes levels of automation in terms of controlling the different things, although that's not quite as prevalent typically in steel casting as other types of casting like die casting. But then you also have as well heat treating, which is where you're heating the part after you made it, and you're adjusting the properties, whether it's going to bend versus break. And that's a huge part of this particular year's competition, because when you have a sword, if it is too hard, it will crack like a stone when you hit it into something. And if it's too, malleable and bendable, then instead it will actually bend around it. And not to spoil anything, we have very exciting examples of both of those things happening during the filming of the
Ooh.
actual competition.
Hey,
So
that's
if
great.
if you like a little bit of danger, you can. I was there, and I have to say there were a few points where I was like, maybe I should sit a little bit further back.
Safety glasses. People will learn
Yes,
about
well,
safety
yes, we
engineering.
I, we were all wearing safety glasses because yes, you got to wear the safety glasses.
No, I love what you're saying. It reminds me of one of my former favorite shows, Mythbusters, where you would always have to look at the testing aspects of engineering as well, where hopefully your engineering was done right and it doesn't explode, or maybe you want to see the after effects. But I love that I'm hearing not just materials engineering or metals engineering or metallurgy, but mechanical engineering, stuff that's applicable to computer science and civil engineering, chemical engineering. There's so many aspects of design and just being creative, even art that I hear
Yes,
when you talk about this.
yes. Actually, no. Thank you for bringing that up. That one of the I think the real pleasant surprises of this has been this has been a really fascinating way to connect the arts and humanities to the engineering campuses, because often you need someone with those type of skills, both with design and the history aspect. So a lot of times, so they have to write a paper and they also have to
Oh,
make a
wow.
video.
I didn't
And
know that.
so, yes,
How do they
so
feel about the paper writing? I'm curious.
you know what's hilarious is we keep shortening how long the paper needs to be, and there's a lot of groaning, which I know sounds really crazy,
Hmm.
but we are talking about engineers and highly technical people typically in these competitions. So they love to talk about the finer details.
Oh, you're right.
Uh,
Editing down is a skill. I have that problem as well.
Yes, yes, but yes, no. So this is a multi-factor competition, and you'll learn that as you watch the episodes. But it's not just the flashy part, but again, it's all very important, and it does allow an opportunity for, yes, you do need those science and engineering skills to make sure that your sword has the right properties, but also we're trying to make a replica of George Washington's sword. So having somebody from the humanities that can do the history research and know that history and what George Washington was carrying and what materials it might have been at that time period become very, very important.
You remind me that like there's a lot of STEM educators, elementary and high school educators, even listening to this show, and I'm sure if they watch Cast and Steel and listen to you talk, they'll be like, "Hey, this is so cool!" It'll get a lot of students hooked on these many different branches of design and art and engineering, but they can't actually forge and fire like stuff at their elementary school. So this is a nice, alternative to show or hook students in without actually having to risk setting their school on fire. But at the same time, like the story aspect of this is great. You're talking about, this season is George Washington's sword. There's, I'm sure, a lot of history that students had to
Yes.
learn to replicate this. And then can you talk about some of just a couple past challenges? I know it's not going to be in this YouTube series, but I remember seeing something about they have to replicate a Thor's hammer, and you have to know about the mythology of that. There's African spear, like basically what are I'm interested in how SFSA chooses the challenge of whether it's George Washington's sword or something else that they gotta cast.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So first of all, on how the challenge is chosen, it is basically a mixture of different people. So Ben Abbott from the Forge and Fire side, he's been in it since the beginning, and so typically him, the SFSA crowd, a lot of the technical judges. We have a lot of. We are super grateful to have many titans in the metal casting industry and also other metalwork industries. Pat Nowak from the forging side has been a great asset as well. And basically, they all get together and they talk. And the main things that they're trying to nail, I would say the primary details is first and foremost, is this fun and exciting? Is it just
Mm-hmm.
intrinsically exciting? And then the second is this a challenge to cast? We don't typically choose things that are easy to cast or the easiest thing to cast. It's not like, okay, this is the best use case for casting. It's more, is this a creative challenge for casting?
Mm-hmm.
And then the third aspect is this going to be fun to test? Because I think another fun part about the competition is, yes, it is engineering, focused, but the tests are kind of this mixture of fun and engineering, meaning like we let the students test their own items. If you've been to a college, college students come in all variation of skill with physical capabilities. So it's not a standardized test. And that now the judges are nuanced enough to be able to read into that and to be able to figure that out. And so it's not like that is a detriment. So anyway, getting into the items, which will give you more of an idea of how this actually works out in the wash. 2019, we did a Viking axe. Then 2020, we did a Bowie knife. Uh, I believe I cannot remember whether it was after 2019 or 2020, we had to set a weight limit because we had the
Oh,
most insanely large
yeah,
axes and
yeah,
Bowie
yeah.
knives. Like
Wow.
some of these were like full blown machetes. Uh, and then
And they're going. Are
2020.
sorry, are students flying on planes with their machetes to like show you? Is that what's happening? Or
So, funnily enough, I actually this year had to write I had to help forge an email for one of the teams from Mexico because this year was a horseman's axe, and they were bringing an axe through the border. And so they were like, "Hey, is this email okay?" And because of the language barrier, they like mentioned weapons like 6 times. I'm like, "Oh, can you remove weapon from this? This is a
yeah,
non-functional historical replica, not not a, you know." So
yeah.
anyway, there's some nuance on how you do that, but yes, these have flown. Actually, if you want to know the hack, just learn this from Ben Abbott. You say it's a sculpture. It's a sculpture. That's what it is.
Which
It's a
is
metal
true.
sculpture.
It's
It
very true.
is.
Yeah, it's
It is
art.
true. Yeah, so then 2021 was Thor's hammer, so more of the fantasy side. Then 2022 was a Celtic leaf sword. And then 2023 was an African spear. And then 2024, we went more practical route, which was the Halligan bar. Um, which, if you're unfamiliar, a Halligan bar is the tool that firefighters use to, break down doors and pop tires out of cars. Very, very cool item. And then we went to George Washington's sword, and then this past competition, which will end up being season two, was Horseman's axe. And again, I think what we've realized throughout the years is you want to pick something that if you ask a regular college student, "Hey, would you like to make X?" they're excited about it. And that's really, we know that we've won if when you say, "Hey, you want to make George Washington sword?" they're like, "Yes."
Yeah, no, that sounds exactly right. I think if I know you've spoken with other educators and they would say the same thing. You got to hook people in before they'll have their buy-in and try to start learning. You got to have motivation, and I love that about this show, this concept. Can you rehash how people can watch the show, and maybe for university students how people might learn more about the competition in general?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, first of all, the show is on our YouTube channel, which is just Cast and Steel. The website is castandsteel.net. You're going to find a bunch of information there in a variety of different places. I would say if you are interested in competing at the college level, I would look up castandsteel.net. There's an easy way to get more information there, and the upcoming competition details will be posted soon. I also would suggest at every level to pop over to castandsteel.net, and then you can click. There are links. There's a lot of sister organizations that we're involved with. So there's a
Mm,
competition called Casting Dreams that goes all the way down to the age of 8, which
cool.
is a lot of scratch molds and foundry in a box, which is, you were talking about earlier about metal casting in the classroom at a younger age and a middle school age. You the main thing you do is you just use metals that don't melt at quite as high a temperature, because steel casting is by nature quite dangerous, whereas casting something like tin you can do much more safely in the classroom. And so there's Casting Dreams. There's also Ace and Metal, which are both, again, programs a lot of times run on college campuses, but open to high schoolers. I had the privilege of going over to Ohio State University earlier this year, and they had a metal boot camp, and it was all high schoolers doing metal pouring and then some finishing work afterwards, polishing, grinding, all of that.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you're reminding me that Steel Founder Society is not just in Ohio, and all of these other organizations are local. I'm sure there's places, I know there's places where I'm at in Austin, Texas, where folks can find these opportunities. So, yeah, thanks again for the sharing of all of that information. I know a lot of people will check it out. Is there anything else, Robert, that you want to plug before we close out this episode?
Yeah, I would just plug just this general idea, which is uh, the reason to look into getting into metal casting and manufacturing. I'd love to say is because, we need it for national defense and it makes our country stronger. All of those things are true. But I would say get involved because these people love what they do. You will run into a community, the likes of which you have never been a part of, where people are excited about solving problems and helping people on a daily basis. And you are not going to be a stranger for long. They're going to be so excited that someone else decided to get involved in the thing that gets them fired up every day.
That was Robert Monroe, representing Cast in Steel and the Steel Founders Society of America. The K-12 Engineering Education Podcast is produced by this indie studio, Pios Labs, which fosters growth in engineering and education. Follow Pios Labs to check out free educational tools and other fun stuff. That's PIOS LABS. Thanks for listening so many years later. Appreciate it.